for tuning in to Love at First Laugh, the Green Room edition. And today I'm so excited because I have a great guest. He is a comedy coach. I think he's the best in town. And I worked with him and he's incredible. He has taken me to a whole different level of comedy. And you'll see why. He is the author of How to Kill in Comedy. Please welcome Steve North. Hi, Steve.
How are you, Grace?
Good.
Say the difference between a comic and a comedian. Well, that kind of strikes to the heart of everything that I teach. And, like you said, I wrote this book, How to Kill in Comedy.
Nice.
It just came out in March of this year, and it's selling really great. It's 25, 30 years of my history of teaching people to be funny. So I think the most important thing to start with is the idea that there's a difference between a comic and a comedian. So a comic is someone that makes funny observations, tells jokes, tells funny stories. A comedian, on the other hand, is a funny person who also tells funny stories and things like that. And there are a lot of people who are comics that get decent laughs. But basically, when we look back over the last 100 years, the only people that have ever really made it in comedy are comedians, not comics.
I agree. Can you give us an example of a comedian versus a comic?
Yeah, almost anyone you've heard of, all the way back to, Anthony Jeselnik is a comedian. All the way back to Rodney Dangerfield, a comedian. I guess I should explain the parts that make them a comedian.
Yes.
So the great comedians have what are called a comedic character or a persona, if you will. I call it a comedic character, but so it's made up of 4 parts, but the 2 parts that created at the beginning are the most important. So part 1 is called flaw, F-L-A-W. Means there has to be something wrong with you to be funny. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. But I mean, it's not funny if I just said, hi, I'm Steve North and I've accomplished everything I want to in life, unless I shovel elephant shit. And then it's kind of funny because, then it's a flaw. So a flaw, however, without the opposite part 2, which is called blind spot. Blind spot means that the character cannot understand what's wrong or funny about him. So, for example, I was talking about Anthony Jeselnik. His flaw is that he's insulting and insensitive. But his blind spot is that he thinks he's charming. And you can go back over any successful comedian, all the way back to Rodney Dangerfield, who thought he deserved respect. His flaw was that he was obnoxious. His blind spot is he thought he deserved respect. Some people get a little confused and say, well, what about Jerry Seinfeld? Isn't he doing observational stuff?
Right.
But no, it's that his flaw is that everything he talks about is unimportant.
Right.
He has no life. His blind spot is that he thinks everything he talks about is super important. Kevin Hart, he's the ultimate victim. His flaw is that he's too sensitive. Everything bothers him. Everything upsets him. That's why he's always talking like that.
Yeah.
But he doesn't get that. So you will never hear any of these great comedians acknowledge their flaw. In other words, Anthony Jeselnik, before a joke, would never say the words, now I know I shouldn't have done this. This was kind of insensitive and rude, but, and then tell us, because then he's aware of what he's doing wrong. So the importance of the blind spot against the flaw is that it allows you, the audience, to laugh at him or her because you see that they don't get it. So in other words, Jerry Seinfeld would never have said, now I know this isn't very important, but can't we do something about the shape of elevator buttons or, early bird specials? No, he says it as if this is the most important thing you're ever going to see. In fact, what that got him, by the way, was when he went to NBC with his manager and they pitched the show, which was about a guy with no life. He was rewarded with a clearance of one show. He's the only person that ever got a clearance of one show. But anyway, that took off because you got to have a character. That's the truth. And when I started coaching and teaching, a lot of people have different theories. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. And so I just go by what the successful comedians are doing. And you have to have a flaw and you have to have a blind spot.
Definitely. Can you expand a little bit on what is a comedic character?
Sure. It's that thing that you look at that you go, oh my God, this guy doesn't get it, or she doesn't get it, So there are 4 parts to a comedic character. I told you the first 2, flaw and blind spot. Part 3 is attitude. And the attitude just has to back up the blind spot. Right. So if Kevin Hart thinks he's going through horrible times, then his attitude has to be, oh my God, that's terrible. And it has to match. It's like an equation. Let's take a very simple character like, Rodney Dangerfield was. So his flaw is that he's obnoxious. His blind spot is he thinks he deserves respect. Therefore, his attitude has to be frustrated, because if he thinks he deserves respect and he's not getting it, then his attitude has to be frustrated. And that's the way he talks to you. It's like, I'll tell you, I can't get any respect. He's serious. His character is serious about that. You, of course, laugh because he's hopeless. You realize he's hopeless. He doesn't understand what's wrong with him. Part 4 is kind of interesting. I call it agenda. And agenda means, and keep in mind that when a comedian steps up in front of an audience, he is really just getting up in front of a group of strangers to try to convince them, like Rodney's trying to convince you that he deserves respect. Anthony Jeselnik wants you to say back to him, oh no, you're charming. That stuff you say it's not rude at all. And so it's this constant trying to show us that you're not something and showing us that you are. And that's what makes us free to laugh. See, without a blind spot, if I know what's wrong with me, if Kevin Hart was saying, now I know I'm getting too upset and I shouldn't be getting this upset, but this happened, then instead of laughing, your reaction would be, well, why don't you get help if you know what you're doing wrong? Go see a therapist, right? So you have to play your character, whoever you are. It has to be somebody that doesn't get what's wrong with them.
Right. And what is the difference between attitude and emotion?
Oh, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's what emotion is coming out of you. So interestingly enough, well, to me, of the 4 parts of a comedic character, part 1, the flaw, only comes out in the punchlines.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Whereas blind spot, attitude, and agenda all come out in the lead-ins and the setups and all that.
Interesting. So, what is the difference between like your true self and your public persona? Because you talk about in your book how to develop your character, and so you have to differentiate what is your public persona and what is your true self.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I see us as having 2 different parts to us. There's the protected part, which is what we have done to ourselves to make ourselves okay. And there's the unprotected self, and that's basically who you were in the sandbox when you were 5 years old. And that's the only part of you that the audience wants. And you'll see a lot of people that struggle when they first start comedy because they're trying to show you, no, I'm smart, or I'm this. No, that's not. We want to see what's wrong with you. A therapist, a psychologist tries to make you better. A comedy coach, tries to mess you up and make you what you really are underneath all that BS. Yeah.
Totally. And it was funny how you found my victim character, and it
Yeah.
was like what I said to you. It was very victimy, and you were like, ta-da! So
Yeah. If I talk to somebody long enough, I'll see what their character is. I'm pretty quick at it by now.
yeah.
It's a strange thing to be good at. When you were first starting, you were sort of trying to be very what do we call it, aggressive, and listen to me, and I'm great,
Yeah.
and all this. And the minute we got you to fall into, I'm a victim, none of this is my fault, then your act just took off. You became hysterically funny.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And that part of me, it was funny because when you found it, that's when I was working on that issue. And you just picked up on it and just run with it and made me money, because I got booked more because of that. Because
Yeah.
it's amazing the difference between having that emotion, that frustration, and understanding where you're coming from as the comedian versus just saying jokes.
Well, yeah, just saying jokes is being a comic. And the reason you don't want to be a comic is, think of it this way. If you gave, in fact, any of you are listening that are stand-ups, take one of your jokes. Now, if you could hand that to the next performer and they would get exactly the same laugh you're getting, you're being a comic, not a comedian. In fact, if that's the case, you might as well write it down on a piece of paper and hand it to the audience, and you'll get the same laugh. So it's the combination of the joke plus who you are, what's wrong with you, what's distorted about you in real life. And then, of course, when we write the material, we exaggerate, like we're making you more of a victim than you really are. But that's a natural part of you. And I guarantee you that's who you were when you were crawling around in the sandbox.
Oh
You
my God, absolutely. My mom used to like beat the shit out of me. So I would be like, I didn't do it. Why me?
Yeah. And you were probably the one who perpetrated stuff against other kids and then went, oh, no, I didn't do anything wrong. He made me do it.
Yes, I still do that.
Yeah, the strange thing is that everybody has a different comedic character, just like we have different faces. No two are the same. And so the process when somebody comes to me, whether they've been doing comedy for 10 years or 10 minutes, is I have to find their theme. I have to get them in touch with who they are, who they were in the sandbox. And the strange thing is that after they go through this whole process and they're doing their persona, they suddenly realize that when they're at a party, maybe a little bit high or something, that's exactly what they're doing when they're being funny. But we change that when we get on stage because we think we have to be more intelligent, more assertive, more whatever. I mean, you just got to not only be what's wrong with you, you got to be it in spades. If you're a nervous person, you got to completely fall apart on stage. If you're cocky, then you got to be incredibly cocky. And then when you add the blind spot, it's hysterically funny.
Absolutely. And do you find that a lot of comedians, when they start, they resist what you're telling them is their flaw? They're like, I'm not like that?
Some of them, I go, oh, so this is who you are. And they go, yes, that's me. And they go with it. And other people are very protected and they resist it. In fact, to the point where I have coached people and they're suddenly having tremendous success in clubs and even on television. and their inner ego can't take it. And they actually prefer not to go over as well just so they can be who their own self-image is instead of what's funny about them.
Wow. Do
Not a
you
lot
think,
of people, but yeah.
no, but some people, I can totally see that. I mean, we resist sometimes to see ourselves the way we really are.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
also we're trying to be like other people we've seen as performers. Yeah, and so we feel, oh, well, I can't just be myself up there. Well, yeah, you can. Now, the other side of it is once you understand who yourself is, then you have to totally exaggerate your behavior and do things that you would never do in real life. Um, and the reason that works so well is because, audiences, they totally know who you are before you ever open your mouth. They don't know it, but they know when you're being the true you and when you're not, you
Yes.
know. And you can fool them just for so long, unless you'd like a career like any number of nameless people who are comics and still get laughs, but you've never heard of. There was one guy when Barb and I, that's my partner, Barb and
Yeah.
Steve Arth, we were a comedy team in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. There was somebody who literally did the Tonight Show 25 times, and you still never heard of him. And it's because he was a comic, because there wasn't anything about him for you to remember. Um,
Interesting.
and that was in the days when, if you did the Tonight Show, 30 million people saw you, not what they see today. I don't mean to sound like an old codger going, yeah, back in those days.
Back in my day.
Yeah, we had to
A
walk
little bit like,
uphill.
okay.
Yeah, we had to walk uphill in the snow to go to the Tonight Show and perform.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's a whole process that
Mhm.
everybody goes through. And some people are more keyed into it at the beginning and have less of an ego protection.
Right.
And other people are very against it. And I have trouble with those people. Not that they ever get anywhere when they're not doing their character, but
But it's interesting because when I changed to the victim character, um, I felt actually vulnerable, but at the same time more empowered because
you know,
it's like, oh, this is the bullshit that I have to deal with in myself. And now I'm turning it into something that makes people laugh, into something positive. So it actually is very empowering to make yourself that vulnerable.
well, not only that, but once you start doing it, you realize, wow, I am an expert at this. I know what's wrong with me way better than anybody else. And
Yeah.
then you're doing something unique and you're great.
Mhm.
Whereas somebody just kind of hiding themselves and yeah, doing jokes, you know, they're just not showing you anything. So the truth is, over the years, and this is what motivated me to start coaching people into persona rather than to be a comic, is I literally went over every single performer who's ever made it. And I found that every single one of them has a flaw, a blind spot, an attitude, and an agenda. Whoops, sorry. Uh,
Oopsie.
and it's all in my book right here.
Plug it, plug it. We're gonna plug it. Don't worry. I have your website to share screen at any moment. So
Yeah. Um, so, what else would you like to
okay,
know?
well, you say in your book, to find your comedic character, it's like building your comedy house before you buy the furniture, which the furniture is the jokes.
That's right. You got to start there. The biggest nightmare for me is somebody who's been doing comedy for 10 or 15 years and has 2 hours of material, none of it in character. And it's like they pull up in front of my house with 2 trailers full of furniture shit from 10 years and 20 years, just all. And now I'm supposed to convert all these coffee tables and chairs into something that fits their house. So you're better off starting with who you are, and then it all comes from that. Now, the truth is, most people that I coach once they understand their character, it's not that big of a deal to change some of their material into their
Mhm.
character.
True.
It doesn't really change the punchlines. It just changes how you go into each joke.
The attitude, like I had jokes from way back, and when I changed the attitude, they became funnier. Same joke.
Oh, I mean, I could write a book, and I did.
Wow, you did. And that's why you're here.
Yeah. Um,
So you say that you feel a lot safer pointing out the absurdity of something exterior to you rather than revealing your own absurdities.
yeah.
Uh,
That really tells you the difference between a comic and a comedian.
right.
uh, um, a comedian is always vulnerable.
Hmm.
If there's no vulnerability, you're not going to have a career.
Yeah.
And vulnerability doesn't mean, oh, I'm all nervous. Sam Kinison, who was screaming at the top of his lungs, was vulnerable
Right.
because he's so upset, he's screaming.
Yeah.
And you have to be vulnerable. If you are just doing a show and you feel comfortable, you don't need the audience. The audience responds to you because they sense that you desperately need something from them. Think
Hmm.
about the great comedians, how they, again, all the way back to, Rodney Dangerfield. I tell you, I get no respect. He's coming at you, and you're like, oh, this guy has a problem. He needs me. And then I always say audiences are in two different states of mind. Number one, which you don't want them in,
Hmm.
is all right. You're doing your joke. I'll wait. I'll hear the punchline, and I'll judge your punchline. And that's what a comic gets. And plus, you get no laughs during the setup or the lead in or anything. They're just waiting for your punchlines.
Yeah.
A comedian, on the other hand, who's a funny person, um, you're laughing as much at who they are as what they're saying. And another real hallmark of a comedian is people are laughing when you do a setup, like when Anthony Jeselnik tells you he was went to his neighbor's fifth grade play. You start laughing because
Hmm.
you know he's going to say stuff to that kid that he shouldn't be saying. And his attitude, you start laughing before he ever gets to the punchline. So I got a little off track there. So the second state that an audience is in, as I was saying, is they respond to you need them for something.
Hmm. Yeah.
That throws them out of judging your jokes. Now they're just listening to you. They're feeling your emergency, your stuff that you're coming at them, wanting to convince them of. And believe me, that is a whole lot less painful than way number one. If you're only as good as your last punchline, you are sentenced to sweat every time you perform. And the best you're going to get it when you get off the stage is, whew, I got through that and I got some laughs. Yeah, that's not where it's at.
No, not at all. And when you put emotion into it, I remember when I didn't put emotion into it, I was just telling jokes. It was that feeling like, oh shit, they better laugh or else. Now I don't give a shit. I just go up there and just let my emotion out. And that's what they're kind of laughing at and the jokes too. But the,
Yeah,
the,
well,
the
I mean,
emotion.
just notice the difference. If I just say, yeah, well, Barb and I have been married for a long time, and blah blah blah, and you're
Mhm.
just waiting to hear something. But what if I go, so Barb and I have been married for a really long time? Suddenly, you're in a different place. You're like, ooh, what? And that's the way we as audiences react to a performer, whether it's anger or uh, it can be anything, because everyone has a different attitude, because everyone has a different comedic character. um, yeah, when you really got into your victim thing, and you would start by going, and here's another thing, and we were like, we weren't listening for punchlines, we were like, oh, what else?
I know. What else? And people sometimes on my social media, they're like, waiting for my dating horror stories because that's what I mostly talk about. And they're kind of like, you haven't posted anything in a while, so I have to like join match. So I will
Yeah,
post because they give me guys give me like so much material. It's not
yeah.
even
Well,
funny.
see, that's the difference between how you started and what you're doing now.
Mhm.
So when you told horror stories on a date, you were just giving us information,
Right.
and you were almost, saying, well, here's what this guy did and here's what that guy did.
Hmm.
But as soon as you became a victim and took on your blind spot, we just couldn't believe how vulnerable you were, that you were going to do the same shit over and over again and never see what you were doing that was wrong. And that really is another way to look at a comedic character. It's somebody that keeps lining herself up with a doorway and bangs right into the wall every time,
Yeah.
not knowing that they're doing that.
Absolutely. And every time I do, I write comedy, I get tired, and I'm like, this is like work.
It's work, yeah.
It is. People think it's just like, oh, it's fun. But when do you think you say in your book that comedy is part art and part science, right? Can you expand a little bit on that? Why is that?
Sure. Well, the structure of the book is it's in 3/3, which that's all there are. So I guess there's 3/3 of everything, right?
Yeah.
The first third just focuses on comedic character and encourages you to find out what's true about you. You query your parents, your best friends. You ask, and you get a very uniform set of flaws that come out of that. Then you add a blind spot and an agenda, but so the second part is what you're asking about. The second part of the book is an 80-page workbook, which has 20 of, I think, the best comedy formulas that we've developed in our workshops over the last 25 years.
Mhm.
Um, um, and of course starts with a thing called the caricature artist, which is a formula that makes you come from your character. Then it goes into all kinds of things like the switch and all different things. So you do need the format of the science of stand up. Like there're just certain things that you have to do whether you're being a character or not. Like pause for misdirection. You have to do a lot of misdirection in comedy. So it's very important how you put the words together. If you just say, like if you just said, oh, I had the worst date, it was so bad, and then you tell us what was bad about it, there's no surprise. So once you're in your character and you're going, I think I made some progress on the date last night. I mean, the guy actually talked to me twice before he dropped me off and went with another girl. See, that's the blind spot. That then we're like, oh, you poor thing, you don't get what you're doing, do you? So that's again, you constantly walking into the doorway, into the frame of the door instead of through the doorway. And there's another definition I like to give people of a comedic character, which is you open this door and here's this person sitting in a vat of shit. And they just look up at you and go, it's not that bad today. The coloring isn't bad. The smell isn't that bad. And that's a lot of ways what it is, Yeah, instead of going, oh, this is horrible, I got to get out of here. It's how you're dealing with it over and over and over again as a
Mhm.
comedic character.
That's right.
And the other thing to keep in mind,
Yeah.
uh, comic versus comedian, is that comics never get special things in their careers. They never get sitcoms. They never get movies. They never get great fan loyalty. If you're a comic, no matter how skilled you are, you might be able to do an hour and a half in Vegas and kill, but it's like pedaling a bicycle uphill. As soon as you're done pedaling, you got to start over again because nobody remembers who you are. Whereas, people who have had even simple comedic characters that are almost predictable, like Jeff Foxworthy.
Mhm.
I mean, uh, he he could have branched out a little more in his character. But even he had a great career because he had a focus, he had a theme, and in a lot of ways it solves people. People are always going, well, I have writer's block. Well, you don't have writer's block. You don't know who you are. So when you understand, when you understand your character, it's like knowing what theme. Like if I told you to decorate a room for a party, you'd wander around going, well, let's see, should I get crepe paper or coconuts or what? I don't know. But if I told you it was a Hawaiian party, in 3 seconds, you've got everything you need. The lathe, so that's in a lot of ways what your comedic character does for you, because in essence, you are the head writer of your own situation comedy. And just like in any great sitcom, if you got to come up with 25 episodes, all you have to do is think about the character's flaw. And now where's a funny place to put that flaw? Where's a funny situation to put that? But without that, I mean, you're just a comedy writer or a comic.
Right. Yeah, I think it's easier to write from a character point of view than just a comic point of view, like random stuff that, can you believe this, whatever. It's so much easier. Am I echoing again? I think according to,
so what? It's late in the year. We don't give a shit.
we don't care. Apparently, Pablo and
Russians are hacking you. Thank you, Pablo.
Thank you, Pablo. Yes. I think
to my uncle Kazlov in Russia, you still owe me 10 rubles, you asshole.
There you go. I think it's him. Oh my God. So you say that absurdity in your book, absurdity is one of the main key elements of comedy. Why is that?
Well, because if you're trying to get a laugh on one of your behaviors, like if you were trying to do a joke about that you'll date anyone who will have you, then it might be kind of funny to date a guy who's balding and wears glasses and has acne, but that's not surprising enough.
Right.
So you have to make all your jokes, even though it's based on your true flaw, big enough to be surprising and get a laugh. So that when you say, I haven't ruled out seals, that's an exaggeration, but it's not, it's funny because it's an exaggeration. I actually dated a seal once. I mean, and if you play it straight, like it really happened. And that's the other thing, that the more absurd you get, the more straight you have to play it.
Absolutely. Yeah, because if not, it's like dun 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 dun, like look at me, I'm funny. Yeah.
But that's why you have to know what your list of flaws are. Every character has like a tree trunk that's the main flaw, and then all these branches that are other flaws.
Right.
So you can take any word that is legitimately a flaw of yours, and you can write a half an hour of stand-up material on it. All you have to do is say, all right, where do we put this behavior? If you're a little bit nervous and scared of things, then, it's not funny to say you wear a mask, but if you just nonchalantly say, oh, I'm going out tomorrow, I have to get my hazmat suit fitted, you have to exaggerate everything that you do. And with the blind spot, you have to say it like there's nothing strange about it.
Right. That's where the straight face comes in. So did you talk about agenda? Because I think you talked about.
Yeah, I mentioned it. So there's 4 parts of comedic character. Flaw and blind spot. Those are the 2 big ones. Attitude just has to match your blind spot. Yeah. So if Anthony Jeselnik thinks he's charming, then he has to talk charming. Agenda is very interesting and very important. So picture this. Take any comedic character. let's say Louis C.K., who's gone a little crazy lately, but his comedic character, what is wrong with him is he's too sensitive. Everything bothers him. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All his great jokes come from that. He's hypersensitive, all that. Okay. Now, so picture one morning, Louis C.K., the comedic character, not the real person, is living his life. His parents, his friends, his girlfriends, everybody's yelling at him. Why are you acting so weird? Why are you so sensitive to everything? Why do you see these crazy things in these normal things? So one morning, he wakes up, his character, not him in real life. His character wakes up and it hits him. I know what's wrong here. It's not me. These people in my life, they're prejudiced against me. Yeah, they're not being fair to me. I'll bet if I get out in front of a group of objective strangers and tell them my story, they're going to go, yeah, Rodney, you're not obnoxious. You deserve respect. Or, no, Jerry, that stuff you talk about is very important. It's not stupid. Or, no, Kevin, you have every right to be upset about these things. That's horrible. That's what the character thinks that the audience is going to say back to him. And that controls your whole relationship with the audience. That is your desperation. You're reaching out to the audience to convince them of all these things, of whatever it is you're trying to convince, whatever your character is sure. So anyway, you get the idea. You're never going to accomplish your agenda. Like, you are never going to convince everybody that you're a victim. That's why they're laughing. Anthony Jeselnik is never going to convince everybody that he's charming, because he's telling us these horrible and sensitive things that he's saying to people. Mm-hmm. But you never give up trying to sell your agenda.
That's right. And one thing that I asked you in the beginning, but the Russians prevented me from, and we went to like the difference between comedians and comics. But I wanted to ask you, because I love your definition of a stand-up comic. Can you give us that definition?
Sure. Okay, my definition of stand-up comedy is giving a group of strangers, not an audience, because that isn't what it's about. Giving a group of strangers the experience of having a true lunatic, your comedic character, carry on a spontaneous and intimate conversation with them. So there are 4 key words there. Mm-hmm. I've already forgotten them. No. there are 4 key words. One is lunatic. You can't be a comedian unless you're a lunatic. Mm-hmm. Conversation is a huge word. That is what the media of stand-up is. It's a conversation. And intimate and spontaneous. So even though I know you've memorized your jokes, you still have to give us the illusion that you're being spontaneous. Mm-hmm. And if you're just doing setup punchlines like a comic does, you're never going to convince us that. That's the main thing that convinces the audience. Oh, he's written some jokes. Well, I'll listen to them and I'll see if I think they're funny. Mm-hmm. And there's no future in that. There's no career in that.
Exactly. And being a character in that comedic character zone, when you go up on the stage, it's actually very useful to handle hecklers, to handle situations that arise as that character.
Yeah. Well, take you, for example. Before you knew your character, let's say somebody yells something up to you, like you're talking about dating, and somebody yells up, oh, you don't have any trouble dating. Now, your old self would have tried to think of a joke or a punchline. Mm-hmm. And even if you did manage to do a funny punchline, which is about 1 in every 10 tries, what would essentially happen is it would ruin the joke you'd started. Mm-hmm. But if you let your character's agenda respond to the person talking to you, if somebody yells up at you, oh, you don't have any trouble dating, it's very simple. Either they agree with case, you would go, "Oh, you have no idea what I go through," and then it would be so easy to just continue on with your joke. So, yeah, even the way the MC introduces you, you have to argue with an MC that introduces your character in, let's say, the opposite polarity that you are. You're a victim. If you get introduced by an MC as, here's a lovely lady, she looks like she's having a lot of fun, having a great time. Here she is, Grace Fraga. You can't do your first joke until you set the polarity correct. You have to argue with that. You have to say something like, "Oh, well, I know I might look like I have an easy time, but I don't, believe me." Then any of your material will flow easily. So there's a million times you use your agenda. But more than anything, your agenda is what fuels your desperation and your audience connection.
Absolutely. And you're talking about emceeing, which is a whole different
Oh,
kind of.
yeah, that gives me gray hairs. So a great comedic character can MC, but he has to stay in character. If you're a negative character, let's see, who's a negative character? Okay, just take someone like Kevin Hart, who's always complaining about
Yeah.
Well, if he falls into the trap of, "I'm the MC, so now we have a wonderful act coming up, and you're going to really enjoy them," he might as well not be there. Plus, he's really messing up his fans, who are like, "Why are you suddenly happy?" Right? But this relates a lot more to you before you make it. So it's very important that you stay in your polarity. So somebody like Kevin Hart, if he wasn't known and he had to MC, he would be correct if he went, "Well, anyway, I've been having a lot of trouble with this microphone. I hope it's going to work out. And this next performer, I hear he's great. But I don't know. I don't believe a lot of what people tell me because this happened and that. But let's just hope he is. So let's please welcome." And then he brings him up. So it's a little harder to be an MC and stay in character because there's a stronger stereotype of what an MC does and what his attitude is. You know, if you don't do one of the four things of your character, it's over. You're not going to go over. So the attitude right there, if you're positive attitude and your character has a negative attitude, you know, if you're Steve Martin, if you remember him,
Yes.
that's about the only person that could be an MC just the way his character is.
Yeah, true.
Because he's super positive and everything's great and wonderful.
How about somebody like Lewis Black? I mean, he would probably be hilarious.
That's the issue. Lewis Black cannot turn into a, "Hi, everybody, and welcome to." He has to go, you know, I was asked to MC here. And the thing is, MC doesn't mean master of ceremonies. Apparently, according to the ancient ritual of something, it means madcap something. And then he would scream about that for a minute. And then he would go, "Well, anyway, I guess one thing I'm supposed to do is bring up the next performer. So before I get any more angry, here's a great performer," and introduces them.
That's right.
It just never... Your comedic character is a life sentence. You can never be seen without your comedic character. I could tell you a couple of quick stories about some big stars who forgot about their comedic character when they got sitcoms. The most, like, one was our friend George Carlin, who took him 15 years before he really got his character.
Wow.
As this guy that was too angry and crazy. And once he did that, he wrote probably 10 hours of HBO specials once he got his character. Well, somewhere in the middle there, he got a sitcom, and he let the network people talk him into not doing his character. You probably don't remember it because it only lasted about 4 episodes, but he was in a bar, and somebody sold him on the fact that he would be this this straight, caring guy that runs a bar, and all these crazy people are around him. Well, how's he going to do his character then? So it didn't work because he wasn't being crazy. He was being the straight guy that was normal and well balanced. There have been a lot of people that lose their characters when network people say, "Oh, we'd like you to be a little more." I think a story that really this is really a long time ago, but do you know who Bob Newhart was?
I think so. Yes.
Well, so he was this guy that he was very halting, talking,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you say you're up on the roof, you're naked, okay, and his character was that nothing bothered him. He was around crazy people and nothing bothered him. So he gets a sitcom, and after the first show, the network people come to him and say, "Listen, you're only getting 5 jokes in per 3 minutes. We need you to talk faster and get more jokes in."
Oh,
And now, don't ask me why. He just knew. Maybe it was because it was in the early days of TV and
mhm.
nobody, but he just said, "No, that's not my comedy. I talk slowly and I repeat myself." And he
Mhm.
refused. And he had a 10-year run of a sitcom. Um, I mean, think about, comedic characters like Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory.
I was thinking about that. Bob Newhart was on it, by the way.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, he was
I don't know why
hilarious.
Bob Newhart came to mind. I guess my brain is exploding. But Sheldon,
Yeah.
uh, the same flaw. This is why your stand-up act is like a sitcom. Every time you see Sheldon, his agenda is to convince you that he's cool. But his flaw is that he's a nerd.
Right.
But he doesn't get that. And that's it, over and over and over and over again. All of his jokes. You mentioned Lewis Black. Everything he brings up is going to make him irate.
Yes.
Even the word hydrate on a water bottle is going to send
Absolutely.
him into a hydrate. That's not a fucking word.
Yeah.
It's over and over again. But the beauty is the audience never gets your formula because it's coming from deep inside of you and it's so natural. An audience, what's that? Oh,
That is
an audience never says,
the laptop.
"Oh, I don't want Anthony Jeselnik to do that thing where he pretends to be charming and he insults everybody." The audience don't think that way. They respond emotionally to you coming at them.
Mm-hmm.
Did I
So
lose you there?
no. You didn't look bad.
Yeah, that looked like he's gone off on something now.
Okay, you understand this is a one-woman production. This is a very yeah.
Yeah, right.
So
Okay.
if there are distractions or something happens, I'm like, I pretend that my eyes are there still, but I'm like working with my fingers, like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So
let's
I
get
guess I should, if you don't mind me telling everybody, I
yes,
have three workshops in Los Angeles.
please.
They're all on Zoom right now, but uh, I've got a Tuesday night workshop at Flappers. I have a Wednesday night workshop that is just Zoom through me, and a Thursday night workshop, which is also Zoom through me. Everybody in my workshops performs at Flappers, and I do private coaching.
Totally. Yes.
I coach people all over the world. My website is funnycoach.com if you want
I
to
am
come.
going to share screen right now.
Okay.
Let me make sure I get it right. Yes, I think I did it. Yes, there it is. Okay.
There it is. Yeah, right. And if you want to check out my book, it's called How to Kill in Comedy right there.
Right,
Yeah.
right
Like
there.
Steve
Amazon.
North, the comedy coach. Yeah.
It says join a free Zoom, find your character seminar. So can you tell us a little bit about that? What is that?
Oh, you had to bring that up, didn't you?
I saw the word free, and that's my favorite word.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, I will talk with anybody for 5 minutes that calls me, and I will actually be able to find their character in 5 minutes.
Again.
So that's what that one's about.
Awesome. So here you have like on the first page, funnycoach.com. So you have the comedy workshops right here. And you also do private.
Yeah, I do a lot of privates. Yeah. I would recommend that somebody do a private hour with me first before they like go into a workshop. Because in that hour, I can't tell you how much you will learn about where you're supposed to come from as a stand-up. Your writing, your performing. Um, Sometimes I get people to go write in my workshops and they do okay, but they're always like, what is it? It takes it always takes 3 or 4 months for them to finally see their character because um, they're trying to keep up with everyone else in the workshop who already knows their character.
Yes.
And then at the same time, we're trying to discover their character.
Absolutely.
So it's good to do an hour. I promise it won't be painful.
No, it's fantastic. Actually, you're like a funny shrink, really. And
I'm the
it,
opposite of a shrink. That's right.
yeah, like
I'm,
a funny one. Yeah.
I'm going to get you back to being your bad self.
But you know what? It's funny because when you really come to terms with who you are and write jokes for it, it's a form of being healed, really. It's
Yeah,
almost like,
absolutely.
yeah,
And by the way, that's Barb, who I was in the comedy team with for so
right
many years.
here. She's
And
right
she
here.
still does some of the teaching, and she also manages. We manage about 15 performers, and she does more of the management than I do.
Okay.
And believe me, if you spend an hour with me, you would know why.
It's so funny.
But everybody we manage has a comedic character, and they're very funny. What else are we?
Your book, where you can get it on Amazon. Can you like,
Okay, yeah, it's so it's there it is again.
yes, How to Kill in Comedy. You really need to
Yeah, it's available on ebook and paperback. Best place to go is Amazon. Just search for How to Kill in Comedy, Steve North. It'll come up, and I think it's $9.80 for the
Oh,
ebook on Kindle. So, and maybe $14 for the paperback. You might think about both of them just because the paperback has the the whole middle section of the book is a workbook where you put in your own jokes. So some people prefer to have that in paperback because they can actually write in the book when they're
yeah.
doing the formulas. Um,
I have.
Also, the other thing I need to tell you is that Zoa Favorite, who was my teacher from first grade through fifth grade, said that I was very nice, but I didn't apply myself. I just had to share that.
You had to share that with
I've been
us.
walking around with it for a few
Waiting
years.
on you, yeah. It's like waiting to exhale. Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Absolutely. But you are the best coach in town, and you have taken me to a whole different level. Not only as a stand up comic, but as a writer. I actually optioned a show.
Sweet.
Thank you. And I credit you for teaching me how to write for my own character because the show is based on my own
Yeah. But you
life.
told me 10%. That's all.
Uh, okay,
No.
I think the interview has ended.
Okay. We'll negotiate after the show. Okay.
That's fine. Okay, whatever. Not everybody wants to negotiate. I don't have any money, but everybody wants
I
to
know.
negotiate. I know. No,
Yeah, I'm just
of
kidding.
course.
I'm just kidding.
You could be a writer on it.
Yeah. I'm kind of busy, but thanks.
Listen to you.
No, the strange, tragic truth is that I am 10 times busier during COVID than I was before COVID. I
It,
know that doesn't seem fair, but I guess more people, because everything's on Zoom. So now people from all over the world can join my workshops on Zoom. And I guess people are home and so they want to work on their
mhm.
comedy or whatever.
And I
Um,
think people need comedy right now.
yeah.
We all need it.
Okay.
So you're
So
the
I think I'm out of gas now.
You're okay, but one more question. Can I ask you one last question?
No,
What
I'm
do
just
you
kidding.
Okay, the Russians are still hacking us because I still hear an echo, which is but anyway, this I ask all my guests, what do you want to be known for?
In third grade, I caught a line drive from Roger Lindauer that was going over my head. I leaped up and I caught it, and all the parents watching applauded. That's it.
Very nice. That's the most original and the simplest, most pure, what you want to be known for
Well,
reply.
I really do appreciate when people thank me for helping them find their comedic character, and it's really a wonderful moment when it's
Mhm.
not really a moment; it's more of a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, when the that thing happens where you suddenly get, oh, so this is a real part of me. I know this part, and now I can write from this part, and I can
Mhm.
show the audience this part of me. Um, and I don't have to hide this part of me anymore.
It's out there in the open.
Yeah, and it's getting great laughs, which is, acceptance. Um, so
Yeah,
all these things you've been hiding about yourself because people disapprove, it's the opposite in comedy. They approve. They love you for that.
absolutely. But not good for my dating life, Steve.
Oh, your dating life it's a train wreck, and it always will be. But that's your karma. So
I know.
as a victim, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it
Well, what's funny about your character, though, is in the end, you get everybody back. You get what you need. You know.
yeah, it's been a train wreck after train wreck. And I'm going to tell you this, I had a guy pull down his pants out of the blue, just so he would show me his private parts on a date.
And how did you feel about that when that happened?
I threw him out.
Because he wasn't big enough for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. See, that's what I mean. You're a victim,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not really. Yeah.
I was like, no, thanks.
No. I have plenty of other crotches to choose from.
Yeah, much better looking
Much
than
better.
that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. See, you get me. I love you, Steve. You're amazing, and I'm eternally grateful to you. And
Oh,
we'll negotiate the 10% after the podcast.
all right. And um, if anybody can make me feel better about what Zoa Favorite told me in fourth grade, just go ahead and email me. Oh yeah, my email is steve@funnycoach.com.
There, and funcoach.com is your website, and they can get your book. They can um, go to your classes, your workshops on Zoom, everything. So everything is all there on the first page.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. Okay.
No, yeah. I agree. Um,
Okay. Well, we've been
see,
talking about
that's what I see. Here's the thing: when I discovered my comedic character, when Barb and I did a lot of performing, and I suddenly realized I don't have to be up. I don't. All I literally have to do is look at an audience and say, "Well, hi, I'm Steve North, and what do you say we get this over with?" And everybody start laughing. It's not even a joke, but because it comes from my comedic character. And then, of course, Barb is the opposite. She's everything's up and crazy and all that. But that's it. That's all I got. You've drained me. I'm empty.
I have drained you for over.
I've got nothing left, unless you can think of a question that will bring something up from the deep recesses of my tired brain.
Totally. Yeah, that's what I do. I drain. No, you are great. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your wonderfulness and your awesomeness. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.